I'm Helen Keys. Our farm is just outside Cookstown. It's my husband, Charlie Mallon's family farm, and it's just about 50 acres, and we have a mixture of crops that we grow on the farm. I think the farm has probably been fairly nature friendly throughout its history. It would have, it was a mixed farm for years, and even when it went to dairy and suckler, it was never a very intensive farm. It would have had a low rate of animals for the amount of land. So it's always been fairly nature friendly, and we're benefiting now from, the old meadows that are still there and the very mature trees that are in the woodlands and around the hedgerows. So that's all creates a really nature-friendly environment. So we're benefiting really from a lot of stuff that people did years and years ago, and the fact that it didn't ever go down a very intensive route. So traditionally the farm would have been mixed, so there would have been a variety of crops and grown in a crop rotation, and different, just a small number of different animals would have been on the farm. Then over the years it went to dairy, and then it went to a suckler herd, and then when we started farming it, we decided to reduce the livestock and move into things like, we started growing flax, we started growing other crops, and we moved into doing more vegetables and things like that. We were in a situation, I think like a lot of farms, where we weren't making enough money from the farm in order to be able to do it full time. So the two of us had other jobs, and that meant that we didn't have the time really to spend on the farm that we would have needed to in order to keep it well maintained and be able to look after the animals properly. So we took a hard decision, particularly hard for my husband Charlie, because it was his family farm and the herd that his dad had. So took the decision to sell off the herd and move entirely into something that we felt we could manage more easily and that would make more money, would be more profitable for us. I suppose our thinking in the sort of system that we're trying to create on the farm now, it's a combination of lots of things. First and foremost, the farm has to be sustainable, financially sustainable for us, where we want to get to is a position where we can be working on the farm and making a good living out of it. But at the same time, that can't be at the cost of our soil, our water, our air and so on. So we need to do it in a way that's environmentally sustainable as well as financially sustainable. So we're trying to get that balance of a way of working. But I think those kind of systems are easy to adopt on a farm like this, especially of this kind of scale, and especially because we already have lots of good natural assets on the farm. What got us interested in the flax in the first instance was we were looking for Irish linen and couldn't find any that had actually been grown in Ireland. And it was one of those kind of very naively sort of said, well, we've got a field. We know that it was growing on our farm and pretty much every other farm in Northern Ireland at some point, so we knew it was an easy crop to grow. So it was that kind of quite naively stumbling into it and thinking, sure, we'll give this a go. There's a good chance it's going to make a bit more profit than what we were doing with the field at that stage. So we thought it would be worth having a go at it. There are so many mistakes that we made along the way, but that's kind of what innovation's about, isn't it? I mean, you have a go at something, you learn loads from that, you do it better next time. And the very first year that we grew flax, we planted the wrong variety, we planted at the wrong seeding rate, we did almost everything wrong, and it was a disaster. But we learned so much, and actually, we got loads of people came around to help us, loads of people told us what we'd been doing wrong, and we learned so much from that. And every year we've done it a little bit better and a little bit better, and now we're getting pretty good at it. The benefit here is that we're not ploughing, so you don't have that carbon cost. You're not putting loads of inputs into it as well. So overall, when we look at the farm as a whole, the fact that we're managing it in that way, we've got lots of mature hedgerows, bits of woodland, bits of wetland, and not using loads of machinery. So all of that gives us a really good carbon score. We have done carbon counting on the farm. We've used the sort of toolkits and so on, and I think this sort of farming where you've got these big natural areas, and especially where you've got areas of wetland and you've got, where you've got hedgerows that are really mature and wild, all of those are going to count towards a really much more positive carbon score. So all of that's beneficial. I think a really healthy farming system here would consist of a much, much bigger variety and diversity of crops and products. And that will include livestock, obviously, that should still be there, but there's lots of opportunities for other things as well. And I think, right across the whole horticulture, agroforestry, fibre crops, all of those things. Within those, there's also lots of little niches. So, it would be mad for us to all start jumping into one thing. We shouldn't all start jumping into, flax or something like that. We need to find that diversity in our farming system. So, lots more of us could be growing flax and things like that, but there's a wide variety of other things that we could be growing too. I suppose the first thing I'd say is, do it a little bit at a time. A bit of trial and error is great. And as I say, we did a lot of things wrong in our first year, but we learned loads from that, and that it was worth doing just from that point of view alone. So, I wouldn't be risking too much in one go, I think is a good thing, have a go. I think also just one of the things, because we didn't really have that much knowledge about what we were doing, we sought out loads of people who knew what we didn't know, and we just went and we just asked loads of questions. And don't be scared of doing that, because there's an awful lot of wisdom and knowledge out there in the countryside. And we went and spoke to other farmers, we spoke to our relatives, we read old books online, and we it was unbelievable the amount of wisdom and knowledge that people were willing to offer us. And I can't tell you the number of people who came up the lane to us and offered to help or offered to give us advice, and we just learned a huge amount from that. So going into anything new, I guess, a little bit at a time, trial and error, and get as much support for it as you can. We think about the environment and we think about nature and sustainability really in all the decisions that we make on the farm. So everything from, when we're choosing what we're going to grow, we're looking for crops that will be beneficial for things like pollinators, for birds and so on as well. We think about where we're planting stuff. We think about, if we have to plough or things like that, we think about that very carefully. We only do it a very limited amount. We let the hedgerows grow fairly wild, which is, we immediately see the benefit from having those big wild hedgerows, not just for the sort of nuts and berries that we can harvest for ourselves, but also as nature corridors and allowing wildlife to thrive in those areas. And we find that if they have plenty there, they tend to leave the crops alone. We think about water particularly. We have little streams running around both sides of the farm, so we're very conscious about keeping those in good nick and making sure there's no pollution. We've very little risk of that anyway, because we don't use we don't put out a lot of slurry, we don't use fertilizer or anything or pesticides or anything like that in the farm. So the waterways are kept really nice and clean, and we can see that wildlife's thriving in those. We have otters and things like that in even the tiny little stream that runs around the bottom of the farm. I think on our farm, because the way that we farm is by its nature, it's low input, and low input means lower costs. So we're not spending as much money as we might on things like fertilizer and pesticides and all of those kind of things. So that definitely saves us money.